Shalom and welcome to Yeshiva B'nai Noach. I'm Tom Averna as we continue with our mystical Hebrew class, the language of creation. This is the seventh class. We'll be looking at the letters Samech to Tsadee. And now we do continue with our journey to the next four letters. We have the Samech, the Ayin, the Pei, and the Tsadee. Now, three of these letters will have a Sophite form with two more to come. The 15th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the letter Samech. It is the number 60. This looks more like the mem, so don't get too confused here. The Samech is more rounded like this here. So the Samech, again, the letter S, 15th letter with the number 60. The form of the Samech is similar to a circle enfolded upon itself, the idea of eternity, also the idea of a wedding ring that binds together. It's composed of two letters, the Kaf as well as the Vav, and that makes up the letter Samech. It's the only completely enclosed regular letter. Mem is closed as a final letter. Represents the circle as the earth, the center being Israel, and the outer and inner being God. A circle has the aspect that every point in the circle is equal or equidistant. So there's the idea of equality here. The meaning of the Samech has to do with reliance, with relying on someone or something, trusting in someone, encouraging someone. The sense of the laying on of hands also has to do with the Samech. One event in the process of offering a sacrifice was the person's resting his hands on the head of the animal, thereby forging a connection with the animal that was to signify the person's own personal sacrifice. This act was called smichat yadayim, literally the resting of the hands. Again, the idea of reliance. Later, Hebrew took this physical act of resting on something and made it abstract, so that lesmoch meant to rest on something in the figurative sense as well, to rely upon something or someone. For example, smoch alai is the modern Hebrew equivalent of the English trust me. There's also the idea of ordination. The act of ordaining a rabbi exemplifies both the literal and figurative meanings of lismoch. The act dates back to Moses placing his hands upon his successor Joshua, thereby displaying his reliance upon and trust in Joshua to lead the Israelite people as well. With ordination, a teacher puts hands on the head of the student, surrounds them with energy, looking at the 145th Psalm, which is an acrostic, meaning that each of the stanzas, the verses, begin with the next letter of the Aleph-Beis. However, one letter is missing in the 145th Psalm, and that is the letter Nun. The phrase Nephilim means the fallen one. So David skipped the Nun so as not to associate God with the fallen one. But the next letter, which is the Samech, and the phrase is translated as God supports the fallen, nicely connecting the missing Nun with the Samech to give encouragement for the times that we fall. We also see in the letter Samech the idea of the Sukkot, meaning booth or shelter, festival reminding us of our time in the wilderness when we were completely reliant on God's support. It also promises us of a future where that will be true. Once again, may it come very, very soon. Also with the idea of reliance, the idea of spiritual support. Without the Samech, the mech means poor or depressed. With the nun, nes, it means miracle. God supports us and encourages us with signs and wonders. Simon is a mark, a distinctive mark. To study Torah, it refers to devices including Gematria, or the numerical idea. Without the ending kaf, sam, equals a potion or a medicine. The final mem and samech connected, also in end times connection. As a final letter, mem denotes a time of Torah enlightenment, but samech in some ways is greater because it represents the infinite healing light that will bring about the resurrection of the dead. The letters of dreams and sleeps, Talmud teaches that sleep is 1/60th, again, that's the number of Samech, 1/60th the part of death, and dreams are 1/60th the part of prophecy. It's the idea of the equality of all Jewish souls, the marriage of two halves, the divine presence in marriage. The Ein Sof, which is the infinite God without end, an infinite circle. So we have many, many different meanings involved with the idea of the Samech. And the first appearance in the Torah in Genesis chapter 2, verse 11. We see it here in Ha-Sovev. The name of the first river is Pishon, which surrounds all of the land of Kabbalah where there is gold. Genesis 2:11, again, the idea of surrounding or encircling an area. The Gematria of Samech is 60, spelled out it's 120, and in its fullness it is 300. Again, sleep being a 60th of death, the idea of the fire of hell, the honey of manna, Chabad of the world to come, 600,000 Jews left Egypt, 60 tractates of the oral Torah, 60 letters of the priestly blessings, and the 30 bones in each hand, which equals 60. Again, with dreams being 1/60th of prophecy, the idea of a circle, the idea of surrounding, saviv, the two manifestations of God's presence. One is surrounding God, the other fulfilling God. In the aspect of 120, we see words for graciousness, stands, pillar, cloud, your water, strong or mighty. All of those words have Gematria of 120. And then from 300, we see the idea of to form or to create, 300. The meditation on the Samech, as you focus on the form of the letter, it's to feel God's support as we go through this life. We can gain great support and encouragement from knowing that God cares. That would be one meditation. Anything to do with reliance on God, God's support, that would be a good meditation for the Samech. Moving now to the 16th letter of the Hebrew Aleph-Beis, the Ayin, which has the number of 70. We'll talk about this, but notice here its form. The shape of the letter Ayin is like two eyes attached, and it is interesting. The Ayin is probably the one letter that most in its form indicates its meaning. Again, as the meaning is eye or eyes for the Ayin, we can definitely see that in the form here with two eyes, along with the optic nerves that would go down from the eyes. Again, it's the idea, and it's also facing to the left. On our left side is our heart. This shows that our eyes, our insight, and consciousness will influence our heart. Our job is to set our eyes, our insight, our consciousness on what is appropriate. In this way, our heart can be purified, enabling us to love God with all our heart. the right eye looking up at the sky, the left eye looking down at the earth, the sheep looking towards the shepherd watching sheep. It's the idea of emulating God by looking downwards to help and care for others, but also to receive our nourishment from above. As I said, the shape, two branches as eyes, kind of closed in. You can see the two optic nerves. From the Torah, it says God looked or saw, that teaching that God's eyes are divine providence. God is in control. The eyes of God are on the land of Israel from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. All of those quotes shows how special Israel is. Also notice the tagin from tag in Aramaic, or keter, crown in Hebrew. We can see one of 7 letters with the 3 tags, called the Shatnez Gats, the Shin, Ayin, Tet, Nun, Zayin, Gimel, and Tsadee, or the Bedech Chaya has one. This is these are also referred to in various different ways and have different meanings all of their own, which is going to be beyond the scope of what we're doing here, but just know that they also are very, very important. Each has a special significance. Rabbi Akiva has the main commentary on them. The letter Ayin can also be composed from the letters of Zayin, as well as the letter Vav. Together, these 3 letters form the word Az, or Oz rather. The strength of the Torah, which is the meaning of the Pasuk, Hashem gives strength to his people, from Psalms 29, verse 11. The 2 arms of the letter Ayin symbolize both the written and oral Torah, which must be interpreted and learned in unison. By doing so, one reveals novel interpretations, earning him the title of an overflowing spring of knowledge, from Pirkei Avot 2:11. The Ayin, like man, has 2 eyes on its top, figuratively. The fact that man has 2 eyes is taken by our sages as a symbolic indication that man has free choice of what use to make of his eyes, from Yalkut Sofer. Man can condition himself to see the positive side of every situation. One can see the glass as half full or half empty, and it's up to us to decide which outlook to choose. The meaning of ayin, as I said, is the idea of eye, the eye. The light of the eye keeps us on the right path, and the eyes must be towards God, the window to our character. The eyes are the windows to the soul, it says. We need to see our trials and tribulations and enemies through the lens of God and through God's love. And as we look, we see no evil. The Talmud advises to not try to calm a person when he's at the peak of his anger, citing the words of God to Moses, "Wait until my anger passes, and then I shall forgive you." A Midrash encourages us to remember the positive traits of the person who offended us. In this way, we emulate God himself, who is also referred to as he who is slow to anger. So again, as we look at our fellow man, as we are tempted to judge one another, there is a place for that, but for the most part, the idea is that we are not to judge in the sense that we see evil in someone else. We should look at someone and always see the positive, always see the possibilities, the potential within that person. Sefer Yetzirah teaches us that the liver is the organ connected to the letter Ayin, which corresponds to the Sefaria of Chokmah, which is wisdom, inner dimension, self-effacement. When we learn to worry less about our own pride and instead give kavod, honor, to others and to the creator of the universe, we will attain health and wisdom. The idea of a blind person, yoke, a burden, the idea of the avodah, the worship service, the clouds, anan, pillar. There are so many aspects of the ayin that have to do with seeing or recognizing, and especially seeing in the positive sense. The time vision of seeing beyond time. There's that aspect of the ayin as well, that it has to do with the future, 8 hours, avar, the past, a moment, reggae, eternity and vision, ad means until. All of these words have to do with time and moving through time, all part of the meaning of ayin. The first appearance for the letter ayin is in Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. Elohim called the light day, and the darkness he called night. It became erev, evening, erev, and it became morning, one day. So evening is a time when it's often difficult to see. It's a time of hiddenness, and we often need special lenses to see well, night glasses. This is the world we live in, and our special spiritual lens is the Torah, God's word. It illuminates our way. Ayin can provide us with spiritual eyes. Gematria of ayin is 70. It's the 16th letter spelled out. It is 130. And in full, it's 256. The idea of 10 times any number is the full manifestation of the number. So ayin would be 10 times 7, which is the number of completion. So we imitate cycle on the seventh day, completion of a cycle, completion of creation. The 70 descendants of Noah, the souls that went down to Egypt, the elders in the desert, the Sanhedrin, the prince of the Sanhedrin and 70 members. All of that is part of the ayin, the 70. If you exchange the letter Aleph with ayin, both of them silent letters, or reverse that process, you get a much deeper meaning into the idea of the word itself that it's a part of. Zayin also represents a movement, a flow. It's insight and consciousness, the idea of the eye, looking, sight, sparkle, a spring or a fountain, reflection or meditation. 70 nations, the 70 bulls of Sukkot that go along with the 70 nations, the 70 faces of the Torah and studying, the 70 elders, the 70 words of Kiddush, the 70 years of King David and the Babylonian captivity. So many things have to do with the number 70, the letter ayin. Yayin and Sad both equal 70. Yayin is wine, Sad is secret. So there's teachings related to the idea that that both are connected in some way. The idea of the 130 also has to do with a ladder, and it has to do with Sinai. 256, the word for has appeared or been seen, has the same gematria as 256. And the meditation on the ayin is to concentrate on how God is present and in control of your life and guiding you. God sees us lovingly. So as you meditate on the ayin, imagine God looking at you as a father looks upon his child in a loving, caring way. Our next letter is the 17th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and it is the letter Pei, along with its final form, the Fe, and it has the number, gematria, of 80. The shape of the letter Pei is that of a kaf with a 180-degree rotated yod, The white space, and this is the interesting thing about the letter bet, kaf rather, is that the white space in the middle, you can clearly see the form of the letter bet, which represents the written Torah, whereas pei, meaning mouth, represents the oral Torah, which encompasses or encloses the written Torah. A lot of teachings from that. The yad represents the Ten Commandments within a box, the ark. It also represents the higher side contained within our bodies. A guideline on how to teach Torah is given in the Talmud's interpretation of the letter pei. It has two forms: the bent pei, which appears in the beginning or middle of a word, and the final long pei, used at the end of a word. So the Talmud's interpretation alludes to the two different functions of the mouth: speech and silence. The bent pei symbolically alludes to a closed mouth, while the open long pei is taken as an allusion to an open mouth. We must both learn and teach. All communication involves both words and silence. Talmud Baba Metzia says, don't say one thing with your mouth and another with the heart. It also is important to note that the pei, the mouth, follows ayin, the eyes, because we should see and understand before we speak. Just very powerful teachings between the ayin and the pei. As we said, the meaning for pei is mouth or speech, saying, ordering, commanding. It's an opening, an orifice, an entrance. It as an adverb, po means here or present, being in the present moment. Also the idea of af, which uses the final form of the pei. It can be translated as nose, but it also can be translated as anger. This is pei reversed to show that when we misuse our words, we anger God. We can create with our words. The mouth is the entryway. The oral law, the da'at, is the power of union and communication. Providence is the power of da'at, as revealed by the eyes, the written Torah. The power of da'at, as revealed by the mouth, the speech, or the oral Torah. And the idea of abracadabra, if you've ever heard that phrase used by many magicians, it means I will create as I will speak. In other words, the power of speech in creation. And also the power of prayer. Maimonides declares that even repentance is incomplete and ineffective as long as one fails to express his regrets in the form of a verbal confession. So repentance needs to be in a verbal form, the power and importance of our mouth and our speech, and something that we must guard very, very diligently. There's also the idea of padut, which is redemption or deliverance, separation, deliverance from enslavement or violence. God created through speech, and the same is true for man. We are created in God's image by the very fact that we also can create with our mouths. We can create and we can destroy through our mouths. Loshen hara and Loshen hakodesh represent both aspects of that. In Aramaic, when God breathed a soul into man and he became a living being, the literal translation is a speaking being in the Aramaic. We are able to express abstract thoughts with speech. We have a written Torah and an oral Torah. The oral was written down 1800 years ago, but the Mishnah, Talmud, and Midrash are still called the oral tradition. We still need a teacher to help us understand. Even though it's written down, it's very important to recognize that that doesn't mean that we're capable of learning on our own without a teacher. Torah Shaba'al Pei is the oral Torah, and it literally means the Torah of the master of the mouth. Pei represents the handing down of information. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev gave the meaning of Passover, Pesach, as the mouth talks about wonders and miracles, unlike Pharaoh rewritten, which means Pei Ra, and that means a bad mouth. The double letters, God saw that it was good. It's one of the. I'm sorry. It's one. The Pei is one of the double letters because you have the two letters within it, and it has many other powerful meanings, again related to speech and the importance of guarding that which we speak. We see the importance of the Pei in its first appearance in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. It says, "The earth was unformed and desolate, and there was darkness over the surface, the panei of the abyss. The breath of Elohim hovered above the panei, the surface, hamayim, of the water." Literally means the face of the abyss and the face of the water. Gematria of the Pei is the number 80. If you take the Gematria of the Sofit letter, that is the number 800. Spelled out, we have 81. Sometimes it's spelled with a hey, which is where the 85 comes from, but the primary spelling is usually with the Pei and the Aleph. Spelled out in full, we have 192. 80 has to do with the idea of by reason of strength, we can live to be 80 years old. Age of Moses at the Exodus. It's the number of Yasad. Yasad can be seen as a Yud, 10 added to Sad, secret. So it is, again, that importance of the number 80. And as we meditate on the Pei, again, there are several ways to do a meditation here, but if you just meditate on the outer Pei, or you can meditate on the inner Bet within the Pei, you can meditate on the Sofit form of the Pei. But in all, you want to realize the oral tradition and the oral Torah is alive and well, and every generation adds to it. Meditate on the importance and power of speech and how speaking our prayers can bring healing and love to the world as well as to ourselves. We now move to the 18th letter of the Aleph-Bet, the Tsadee. Its number is 90. It also has a final form, a Tsadee Sofit form. Its design or form, or the original meaning of the Tsadee, has to do with hunting. The righteous person is one who hunts out the fallen to lift them up, the tzud. Also the idea of a bent over nun, kind of see that here, with a yud wedged into its back. The humble tzaddik is supported by God. It's the mate to Aleph, the groom to the bride. In the terms of their looks, their form, 22 letters form mates. They look like each other. So the mate to the master of the universe is the Tsadee, the righteous one. It is feminine to the masculine Aleph, the conscious power to actualize or give birth to potential. It also represents the potential in every child when first born, and why parenting is so essential. Scripture says in Isaiah, all your people are tzaddikim, Isaiah 60:21. And the understanding of that is that we all start out as righteous, but like a wild stallion, we must be carefully raised and carefully trained. The form of the final tzaddik shows us the more we humble ourselves in this world, the more we will stand erect in the world to come. Also, Isaiah 60:21 teaches us that anyone who sins, causing him to forfeit the world to come, if he repents, can regain his share and his title of tzaddik. It is the shape of a tree. So if nun already represents humility, why repeat it? And this shows the great importance of humility in the service of God. Does humility mean to be of no account? Moses is considered the most humble of all men, Numbers 12:3, but he was also a man of stature and importance, 1 Samuel 26:15 and Numbers 13:3. Both talk about that as well. So humility is power under control. It is power recognizing its source. Again, its mate. Who is the power of the tzaddik? And that is the groom, the Aleph to the tzaddik. We talked about the meaning of tzaddik being to hunt, the idea of hunting for things that feed our physical pleasure, or we can hunt for things that feed our spiritual nature. It's only as we dedicate ourselves to the hunt for the spiritual that tzaddik, hunter, is transformed to tzaddik, to the righteous one. Our hunt is not an easy thing. The story of Cain and Abel gives us insight into that. Proverbs 25:26 compares a tzaddik to a spring of water, meaning that even if he is temporarily polluted or troubled, the water will purify itself. There is the related root, tzadak, which is the verb to be right, correct, just, or innocent. The corresponding noun is tzedek, which means righteousness and truth and justice. When the letter he, the he which is the power of being, is added to the end of the word for a main path, a tsadee, giving us a meaning evil design or wicked intent. We see that when we deviate, so tzadee rather, means main path, and tsadee is an evil design or a wicked intent. So again, the message of that is that when we deviate from our main path or teachings, we're led astray and give in to the desires of our being. One of the primary ways that we learn to be righteous, as well as learning to be humble, is through tzedakah, the idea of giving and charity and righteousness. We make ourselves less, we make others more. This makes us more. We give, and our giving completes the circuit, becomes our receiving. Thereby, we become caretakers of the entire world, the internal world as well as the internal world. But this going out to do deeds of giving and charity doesn't mean doing it in a way that calls attention to the doer. These deeds must be done from the covered wagon. They must be done with privacy and not with public acclaim. The deeds of going out and doing tzedakah are pure, bright, dazzling white actions. They float us on the infinitely deep water of love. They bind and form us to its depths, and we blossom from the inner meaning of the Hebrew letters by Herelic. So again, the idea that tzedakah, giving charity, is a crucial part of becoming righteous, as well as becoming humble, as well as becoming and achieving our full potential. Charity cannot be overestimated. It is so important as a part of our lives. When the letter energy intelligence of Tsadee combines with the pulsating, unbridled force of the letter energy of Aleph, there forms the exclamation Tsay, or go out, meaning a liberation from evil. The energy intelligence of Aleph is the kind that fosters community and cohesiveness and manifests most easily in community. We find that Sava is the root that means to assemble, to congregate, to gather together, to take the field or serve in the temple. We have the idea of litzvah. And the word tzibor means communal, public, or congregational. And Sevet means team or crew. So by aligning ourselves with the letter energy intelligence of Tsadee, we become a vessel for true community. The secret of the word kibbutz, ending with the Tsadee, Sofit. The idea of just as tzedakah enables us to become righteous and teaches us humility, so too does being in community. Very important aspect of our lives is that we are not supposed to be alone. It is not good for man to be alone. That has to do with marriage, but it also has to do with why it takes 10 men to form a minyan, to form a community. That's the minimum number, because it takes a group of people working together to help and to enable and to encourage one another. So very important to remember all of that as part of the meaning of the Tsadee. The first appearance of the Tsadee is in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Elohim said, "Let us make man in our image, our likeness, and let him dominate the fish of the sea, the birds of the heaven, the animals, all the earth, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So the idea of Tsalmenu, our image, our likeness. It is the image of God that we are supposed to emulate, and that image is one of giving and receiving and caring for one another, which enables us to dominate, not in the sense of controlling or of ruling over, but in the sense of giving of ourselves to these other aspects of creation that enables us to have that relationship, just as God has given part of himself to us to have a relationship with us. So too we have a relationship with one another and all parts of creation. In its Gematria, Tsadee is the number 90. In Sofit form, in the final form, it is the number 900. Spelled out, it is 104, and in its fullness, it is 558. So the Gematria of Tsadee spelled out 104 relates to the word Vayipach, which is breathed. Also the word Lelamed, to teach. So from here we learn that the breath of life given to us from God is the same as God's commandment to teach the Torah. The one who thinks and speaks and does in accordance with the commandments of God is righteous. The full Gematria of 558 is comparable to Mishpotaf and his commandments, speaking of the importance of keeping those commandments, giving us the same message as the short Gematria, Deuteronomy 11:1, 26:16 through 17. We can see that. The 90 number represents total consciousness of a subject. Seasons change every 90 days. The age of Sarah at the birth of Isaac, the daily number of amens needed to attain tzaddik level, to be firm, certain, stable, reliable, also to believe. All of these words have to do with that gematria. This is also the fulfillment of the energy level of 9, or tet, which is goodness and affirmation. This is the path of righteousness. And finally, in our meditation of the letter Tsadee, looking at its form, its meaning, its number, we can look inside and contact a point of righteousness within each and every one of us, and know that you have a job and a mission to bring healing and rectification and elevation to all of the world. Not only is that your mission, but you have the source and the strength and the power to accomplish your mission. So that is a look at our 7th class, looking at the Samech to the Tsadee, a mystical Hebrew language of creation. Our next class, class 8, will finish up with the letters Kuf to Tav. Hope you'll join us for that. Thanks for sharing this time. I'm Tom Averna. This is Yeshiva B'nai Noah. Shalom.